Gabrielle, welcome to the Rising Author Experience. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It was so cool meeting you last week. I'm so glad we're doing this today because here's the thing. I want to drive the van out to Florida. There's a few people I want to do this with, but I feel like this is good. This is good practice, warm-ups, right? To get the reps in. And then eventually I know we're going to do it in person and it's going to be so epic. And I can't wait for that. Maybe on the beach somewhere in Florida, get the waves crashing behind. That would be money. Anyways, till then, I want to jump right in.
Okay.
Your memoir, All This Healing is Killing Me, dives into a deep personal experience. Tell me, what inspired to turn those experiences into a written memoir?
Well, thanks for having me. This is so fun. And I was always an aspiring writer from the time that I was little. I used my diary as a safe haven, as a refuge. I grew up in a home with a lot of violence and a lot of trauma. And me and my diary, we would just kind of keep a record of things. And it was a way to reflect and feel safe. And that stayed with me. And then, throughout school, I would do a lot of reading and a lot of writing. And I developed a talent for it, but I was very scared to write a memoir. So I stayed mostly in the academic lane. I went all the way through to a PhD in my 30s, like doing academic research and writing academic articles. And in 2007, I wrote the first draft of my memoir, but then I put it in a closet and I hid it away and I didn't show it to anybody. And then in 2013, I took it out again, like trying to find the courage to actually put the whole thing on the page. I finally got through that draft. I gave it to an editor and she's like, "Oh, this is terribly written." I was like, okay. So then I put it away again. And then I brought it out for the third and final time during the pandemic. And at that point, I felt like really determined. I don't know what it was about, like just my life circumstances, that I was like ready. I was like really, really ready to like confront whatever was there that I was avoiding, and finally got through it and found an amazing editor to work with, crafted it into something. And then as soon as I put it down, then I wrote another one. And that one is also coming out this year. So I find that memoir has just become like a lifeline. It's transformative. It's powerful. It's completely changed my career. I'm connected to you. I'm connected to all these new amazing people who've also written their stories. I support other people writing their stories. I mean, it's just been a phenomenal journey. So that's like a little bit of what happened. I think maybe you're muted.
My dog was barking, so I muted myself. Trying to be good at this. Okay, so you and I met literally just a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, but when we talked, it felt like we were already, like we've known each other, And I think that's what's cool about writing memoir. People who have written memoirs, in my experience, now this is not everybody's experience, I get that. But I always feel like the people who have written memoirs, there is a certain type of access and a certain level of consciousness. Like when we meet, we there is no barrier. There's just like symbiotic energy, And I felt that with you. I felt that with many others who've written specifically a memoir, hard stuff to write about, hard conversation, right? The hard conversation with oneself, right? Where we got to go back in time, reveal to ourselves all the BS and how it either helped us, changed us, moved us, all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. And, I fell in love with that process too. And I fell in love with the act of writing and really, and I too was like hiding for a long time and shame and all the things from my refugee experience. And I love that you talk about that so eloquently. And though you've been on a stage for some time talking about all the academic stuff, how has writing your memoir changed that game for you? You know what I mean? Like, because speaking is one thing. I know it changed my game tremendously, but I'm interested to see how it, I guess, brought you more fully to the stage?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I want to address the first thing that you said, that feeling of kindred spirit when you meet another memoir writer. I think we're warriors. I think writers are warriors. I think the stuff that we confront is the stuff that other people avoid. I think our level of self awareness is extraordinary. I think we have a different level of emotional maturity because we've actually dealt with the things. I think we have a level of articulation, right? I think all of that contributes to that sense of like you're with somebody else who resonates, who feels like they've traveled a similar path. They're standing in a similar place. I think it's so powerful, which is why I like try to recruit more and more people to do it. Because it's like, can everybody do this, please? Can we please all do this together? Because I want to hear the stories and I want other people around me who have fought that fight, and who are standing really in an integrated sense of self, not like shadow over here and representative over here. And they're like a fully integrated human. I want people like that in my life. And I think that's like what some of the resonance is. And to kind of discuss like the stage thing, I've been on 47 stages since I started my academic career, but as my representative, right? I was representing some knowledge, and my PhD is in holistic medicine. So I was representing something related to medicine or stress management, or I was working in psychedelic medicine the last couple of years, talking about psychedelics and why people should use plant medicine. And that's a representation, right? That's not like standing in your full self. What I'm transitioning to now, or at least trying to, is being able to be as honest and integrated on the stage as I am in my writing. And that's like the whole next level of like being your full self on the stage. And I think when we see someone do that, like if you think of, we were talking about music before we got on here, if you think of like your favorite musician and you see them perform, and there's just like their soul is in the music, right? You're like, oh yes, yes.
100%.
And I
Yeah.
think the speaker can do the same if he or she is in their full story when they're speaking and they're fully embodied. I think the audience can get those goosebumps that they get when they hear their favorite artist performing. I think it's something to aspire to. It's something that I aspire to.
Wonderfully said. I love that. You're so right in that the fusion of how much you get to know yourself really comes to fruition, right? Because really, I think the only thing more powerful than the pen is a microphone, right? And if you can fuse those two together and get them as close as you can, when the words are potent and they have that soul behind them, that energy, that's when you get those nods. Like you said, like even in the music, like the energy just rides through you, and you just like, yes, I feel it. But it's the same thing when we're reading something really well, not articulated, not really well written, but really well felt. Like you feel that energy. Like I'm sure you've had this too. You've had people reach out to you and say, "Man, I read your book, couldn't put it down, and I cried 4 times."
Yeah.
And like that's just interesting because that's the voice in their head.
Yeah.
And people, and especially like with people that know you and like know how you sound, there was people who wrote to me and were like, "Dude, you read the book in my head, and I can hear you." Like that. I think that is that part that you just said. Like they just feel it so much that you're literally emerging in their mind in some way, shape, or form and sharing that story. That's different than telling a story. That's different than reading a story. That's feeling it. And I think what you're kind of getting at is that's the beauty and power of writing your truth, writing your memoir, writing from that place of, I think, healing. Because I feel like sometimes the reason we don't really go there, and I don't know, you can correct me on this, right, is that like we're still in the process of stitching that wound, right? And sometimes we need to go there and stitch it, right? Like you go to the open wound, you're like, God, what in the madness happened here? And you got to make the amends. You know, you were just saying earlier, like You got to revisit those memories. You got to go back to that person. You got to go back and it's stuff we want to forget. It's stuff we don't want to talk about. It's stuff that you're just embarrassed or shy or all the things, right? It's like those are pieces of you, man. You got to go back and pick those up and bring them now alongside you. But now they complete you, and like now you stand up and you can see the scarring, but it's no longer like an open wound that no one wants to look at, not even you. It's really like, yeah, it's healing and
Yeah.
healed, and I think
Yeah.
that's what it did for me. I think
Yeah. I mean,
writing mine was definitely that.
talking, I
Yeah.
was thinking like about oral traditions, right? Like I was thinking, I studied a lot of during my journey, a lot of Tibetan stuff. I would go to all these Tibetan empowerments, and I went to Tibet, the country, and like there are some things that only are passed down orally. They're not even recorded. They're not even written. You have to be initiated to even hear them. I mean, like that is the power of the word. Like I think we underestimate how powerful the word is. But like anybody can kind of like think back to something maybe a bully said to you when you were young, you know, or someone breaking up, but you can think about it's vibrational, right? It like it
Mm,
changes you as a
yeah.
person, whether the words are being
Yeah.
received or whether the words are being
Yeah.
given, you know?
So powerful. Again, this is why I think we've definitely known each other in a different life or a different past. Like, we can vibe on this all day, and I love that this is obviously intertwined into your like holistic health and wellness, and like clearly you've done this around the world. How has that global experience shaped your views and connections to how you see people today?
Yeah, I did my dissertation research as a narrative analysis. That's a form of research that you can do where you look at stories and you look at patterns in stories for themes. And I interviewed women healers from all over the world. So I interviewed women that were practicing Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine and energy medicine, all these different kinds of medicine from all over the world. And I asked them, like, what does it mean to be
Mm,
a healer? What are these experiences like from your level of mastery? You know, what is this journey? And I collected all these stories and I found all these themes about what medicine globally had in common. And
mm,
then informed all of the teaching work that I did for the last 18 years. It was all kind of based on
yeah.
this information that I collected from them. And so even in my medical work, I'm obsessed with story because I think our health and our illness is a story. And I think
Mm,
depending on what that story is, we're going to have different physical and mental symptoms. And we have evidence of this. Like we know that there's a biology of belief is one of the terms that we use, that you can actually shift an outcome based on what you believe is going to happen to you. And so to me, there's no separation between words and
mm,
health, beliefs and health. Like it's all the same practice for me and always has
yeah.
been.
So beautiful. I love that so much. And like it sounds like the very thread that you found, like in your research or whatever, it sounds like it really more or less scientifically proved to you that the word in of itself, written or said, is the healing component.
Mhm.
And because you've been writing and weaving it in and out, you had to more or less go around it and prove to yourself um, that the evidence is all there. All kind of leads back to that ocean, all the rivers, right? That truth. Um, in a lot of ways, I found that truth too. I think I've been seeking that truth through art, painting, um, just like ancient wisdom. The Quran, my faith, like all of those things. They're all beautiful, and they all were like a garden around me. But writing was the moment of like understanding. And I think I've mentioned this before, and we said this. I shared this with you last time, and it never made sense to me up until I wrote. But my dad used to say this all the time, that it's in the Quran. The Most High says, "Min ta'arifa nafsak ta'arufni." When you know yourself, you'll know me. But "Alamna al-insana ma lam ya'lam, alamna al-insana bil qalam," which is we taught human being, mankind, all that they do not know through the pen. So like the idea of writing teaches you about you. Like again, you know what I mean? There's a deeper connotation to that. It's kind of plucking it out of context, but like that, I didn't understand it. Of course, until I sat down and wrote. You know what I mean? And then it's just like all this, again, all this stuff that I've already had access to, that I knew about, whatever, just made so much more sense, so much more clarity, so much more richness and context. I can hear, taste, and smell it as opposed to just see it and know it like a digital, you know? And so I love that because again, it's that yeah, I feel like the unlocking of some truth for yourself at least is through the writing. And whether you're journaling or full on, like I'm committing to writing my story and sharing it out in the world. Um, so how do you think that like really strengthened your voice in sort of shedding away these things, understanding them, writing them down? You know, I think the human voice has a different quality after writing a memoir, you know, and in the level of empowerment. How do you think it helped you in shaping that voice?
I think the integrity of my voice was always underneath the layers of things that I had added on top of it. And especially like as a female, I mean, I only have a female experience, so I can only speak to that. But you have to adjust the way that you talk to be more pleasing. You have to adjust in a lot of ways. And then to seem smart, you have to use certain jargon and articulate things in a certain way. So you add that layer on top of there, and I think over time, getting overeducated, there was a lot of layers of different things. And really, my underlying voice, because I said I had tried to write the memoir several times, the voice was there. She was there, and I think what I really had to do is create enough time and space to suspend those other layers and just let her talk. Just let her tell the story. And it was so funny because I was estranged from my best friend during the pandemic. She was on the East Coast, I was on the West Coast, and I was sending her excerpts as I was writing them. And I would get to some part in the story that I didn't want to write. And then my voice would change in the writing. And I would send it to her and she'd be like, that's not you. That's not you. Because your best people, right? Maybe your partner, your best friend, whatever, they know your voice. They know your voice. They know. And so I would send her one piece. She'd be like, great, two, great. Fourth piece I'd send her. She'd be like, that's not you. And then I would dig in. I would unpack it and I'd be like, that's not what I freaking think about that at all. Like, why would I even write that down? Like, I don't even believe that. That's not even my belief, And then I'd be like, oh my God. And it's in that constant confrontation as you go through a project like this. It's in that confrontation that I became more clear, like, oh, this is what I believe. Like, and because we accept beliefs without our consent. They're non-consensual. They're there, and then we operate with them. And then until you take the time to go one by one, which is an arduous process, which is why I say writers are warriors. Because until you go one by one, like, do I really believe that? Do I believe that? And then you're like, no. And you're like, oh, okay. It rearranges your brain. It rearranges your life. Because now you're like, oh, this is what I value. This is who I am. Oh, that makes sense. And then all these other things that didn't make sense start to make sense. Oh, that's why it's so hard for me in this kind of romantic relationship. Or, oh, that's why, like, when I try to sell this thing, I can't sell it because like there it's a misalignment, but it always feels wonky without understanding why it's wonky. And so I feel like everything to me, it was like creating like a lot more flow and a lot more clarity and a lot more just efficiency. And it's not as confusing. Like if you were friends with me like 10 years ago, you would be way more confused than you are now. Cause you'd be like, sometimes she says this and sometimes she says that. And like, you would be able to feel in your interactions with me that like there was an inconsistency, because there was,
Mm-hmm.
and now every time I show up, I'm just the fullest version of me, and that's really consistent. And so there's like such a freedom in that, there isn't all the maneuvering, there isn't like adjusting the mask for each situation. There's just so much freedom. It's a much more beautiful life.
Well said. I love that.
It's just so much
You're
more
right.
fun.
It was
It's
truth.
like, ugh.
Yeah, you go from sort of, growing up in America, not knowing a word of English, all this stuff. I was people pleasing just to make sure they liked me, to make sure that I wasn't agitating someone or their feelings or whatever. I also grew up very like an empath, and I felt everything, right? Because I was so traumatically screwed up from the war and being literally trapped in a tent for 4 years in the middle of the desert with my family. Not that that was a bad thing. Thank God I had them. But there was so much feeling. Right? You feel everything. Mom's crying, pops is trying to express, like whatever, anger, frustration. Everyone's on their toes. Everyone's mad. Someone might die. There's just like a heightened level of everything. And so when I came to the States, it was like I can literally almost, like, and I I don't know how to describe it other than this, but like later as I grew up and then I saw the Matrix, and like when he becomes fucking Neo, like the Neo, and he like just sees everything as it is, it's like numbers and shit. I'm
Yeah.
like,
And that moves, and
that's
then
how I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I just see people like I can like sense when somebody's emotional, I can sense when somebody's about to cry. I can sense like that sensibility was so I just never knew how to, it's like having that superpower. You don't know how to use it, how to control it, how to whatever, and it's so overwhelming that you're just like, get this thing out of me and away from me, right? Especially growing up, but then you learn like, oh, that's a superpower. If I can figure out how to tame it, understand it, cultivate it, love it, all of these components, which of course adds more decades of learning and unlearning, right? But I genuinely feel like speaking did that for me. The first time I did a talk in like high school, my speech teacher was just like, just share a little bit about your story. The whole like half the class was crying, and she was like, what, like I wrote like a 4 paragraph thing. I mean, it was terrible. Like I don't know how to write. I barely knew how to like. She's like, will you read this for the class? And that was the first time I feel like my voice not like cracked in the sense of like being a teenager, although that happened many times, but like I cracked my voice, meaning like I wasn't hiding it anymore. This was my truth. And it was just like a breaking moment. And from that moment on, literally kept getting invited to speak, kept getting invited, all these things. But this is why I wanted to ask you like how it transformed your voice. Like for me, writing my story gave me such courage. Literally, my next book is called The Garden Warrior. So like, and it's about those untold stories that are kind of passed down to you through courage, through storytelling, through the sacredness of what they are. And it's all about like the ancient world of like the Babylons and like the hanging gardens of wisdom. And like that's what they were protecting, was wisdom, human knowledge. And like it wasn't just a garden, it was a metaphor to knowledge, And so like even today I find myself like, okay, well, there was a lot of stuff I didn't share about my mother. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't share. So having to write about even more hard stuff, like you said, like you really have to sharpen your tool as a warrior, and you gotta go to those spaces, fight for those memories, and find the things that fuel you today and bring them back in a way that like, oh, we're friends now. This warrior is no longer my enemy. This warrior is my friend, and we're working together now. So it's like those things, these deep complexities, I feel like, of human understanding of oneself is such a beautiful journey if you can just allow your voice to come through. And I think you articulate that so well.
You're saying
But yeah,
so
you're
many important things because, like, I think we don't understand, or at least we don't talk about voice in the way that you just described it, which is it's like a fire hose moving through you sometimes, right? Sometimes, and because the voice is so embedded in the emotion and the memories and the experience, like all of it is all like together, right? Enmeshed. And then the creative process, like the birthing, the alchemy, the transmutation of that into art and into music and into books and all these things, right? It requires a real resilience, right? Like you got, like you're describing it, so like you got to channel all of that somewhere, or you implode. You get depression, you get anxiety, you get substance abuse disorders, you get acting out, you get all all these other symptoms if you're not
yeah,
able to like harness that, like that creative,
yeah,
that's the energy that creates worlds. That's the energy that creates worlds, that energy coming through you. And
100%.
we all have that coming. That's what makes babies. Like it's that same energy.
Literally. Yeah,
It's a
so beautiful.
generative energy. And that's a difficult thing to learn. And especially because our society has like systematically tried to like remove creativity. Like it's removed from the education system. It's like everything's moving towards industrialization and standardization. And like you have these little pockets of like maybe you doing some innovation work in Silicon Valley and otherwise shut up and like sit at your desk and do
Yeah,
the things. So like
yeah,
the whole like practice of protecting the wisdom, the practice of channeling the wisdom, the practice of cultivating it, of learning how to express it, of saying it out loud. Like the whole thing is like, where do you even go for that anymore? Like, who do you even go to
they go to
explore?
you.
Or you,
They
yeah,
go to you.
us, yeah, us. But
Yeah,
like, I mean, like I said, the whole 15 years I was trying to write this book, I was like creeping around, like trying to find a group here and there. I'd like go to some writing club. I would like go to some workshop. I'd go to some conference. And it was like, does anybody feel the way I feel? Like, because like a lot of people are writing, but like they're not necessarily writing about being a refugee or like, something
yeah,
crazy. So yeah,
yeah.
it's nice to
It's so
finally
important.
find people, you know?
Yeah, and again, like back to that whole power of connections, right? Like you said it earlier so beautifully in that, like you know, the technology of the fire, the technology of money, the technology of all these things just created these at first what seemed like millimeter spaces between us, and it just felt like it continues to feel like that space gets wider and wider and wider, even though we're like wired connected, right? Like this, like we're very connected, but the the open space has actually created fears that are non-existent, and they're imposed, like they're like, right, because we aren't taught to express, we aren't taught to share ideas. We're like, there are so many people who want to share a book but they're like, I don't want to get copied, and I'm like, cool, then die with that idea. Like, just cool, bye, right? Because let it die with you. You're so afraid of sharing and expressing an idea or practicing it that somebody else is going to steal it. First of all, your idea is a compound effect of some 10 other ideas, so like, let's just keep it 100 here, right? So like, the human experience of this connectivity and separation happening simultaneously is so interesting, because I get people who say, I'm afraid, I'm like, use the connection bar on LinkedIn and just look for people and connect with them, because you never know what could happen. Because you're not out and about, like, there isn't a million writers in Tucson, Arizona.
Right.
I have the beauty and tool of this thing that I can go find them. I don't have to just go outside now, which is cool. So in that scenario, then I have that option. I have the intentionality of connecting with other people that are like-minded, interested in the same thing. Cool. Now that I have that, what could I possibly be afraid of? Well, how are they going to see me? How are they going to judge me? How are they? Am I good enough? Am I cool enough? Like, all of these things, and I'm
Yeah.
like, well, this isn't middle school. This isn't high school anymore. Like, If people don't vibe with you, they don't vibe with you. If they vibe with you, they vibe with you. Like, it's all good, you know? And so I just, and I always tell people, like, for me, because I've lived through this, like being hungry, not having, we literally living in a tent, whatever. That is so deeply burned into my mind that I'll never get rid of it, and that's great. It's actually the most powerful tool I use today, which is the fear of that is so big, right? It's so enormous. It's like the Hulk in my mind that like everything else doesn't seem nearly as frightening, right? So like you reject me, oh, fucking stand in line over here. That's where they all stand. Oh, you don't like my name, you don't like what I stand for, oh, please, like take that ticket over here. There's plenty. The show is ongoing, regardless of how you feel. And so I just refuse to allow the opportunity that so many of my ancestors did not have, and so many of my people and my even family members didn't get to have.
Yeah.
And they're sitting in front of me almost, right? Like, and all I have to do is work for them and like intertwine and like express myself for. I feel like when I live out my dream, I am living out the life of my ancestors, right?
Oh yeah.
And there's nothing more empowering, more warrior-esque
Yes.
than I can ever. There's literally a sword here. Like this is like this helps me write. But anyway, it's a mini sword, but it's great.
It's so good. I mean,
like,
I want to tell the
yeah,
listeners like how we met, if that's okay.
yeah.
Like I
Please,
was
yeah.
scrolling and I found you on YouTube and you were interviewing one of our mutual friends and I liked the conversation and I Googled you and I found you, I think on LinkedIn, and I sent you a message like, hey, want to talk to me? And you're like, okay.
What's up? Let's do it. I
Our
live for this.
15-minute call, I think, turned into like 90 minutes or something crazy. And I had like handymen here and blah, blah. And then you're like, let's have another call. And I was like, okay. And like, because like, I think the fearlessness that you're talking about and the unwillingness to be disconnected. I am unwilling. I am unwilling to be
Non-negotiable.
disconnected. I will not be disconnected from myself. I will not be disconnected from nature. I will not be disconnected from other human beings. It is intolerable to me. I have one life. I want to be connected. And so like when I saw you, I was like, I want to talk to him. Like, and if you didn't want to talk to me, that's okay. And if we got on the call and it was awkward, that's okay. Like nobody's gonna die, right? And now here we are, like having fun and hanging out, you know?
Besties, for sure. It's the best. It's like that's what I mean. Like honestly, I when you booked that call and you said like in the notes, I think you said like watched your YouTube video, whatever. And I like turned to my wife. I was like, I cannot not do this tour because of this message, because of this connection. Because this is like the third time this has happened. Like people watch a video or see a post or something. I'm like, I can't not do what I love doing. This is evidence of it's attracting the cool people I want to connect with, and I want to know this person. I have this really amazing photograph of my father, and he's probably maybe younger. No, he's younger than me in this photo. He's probably like 25, 26. And he's surrounded by all his theater homies. And they're all in costume. And he's in Baghdad. And because he was like a theater nerd. And he was a poet and a writer and a freaking beautiful artist, like painter. He was the youngest person in all of Iraq till this day to win this award / get the license to practice calligraphy without having to go to a school of thought for calligraphy to get licensed. Like amazing. Anyway, so he was in theater or like as a part of a show, and he's just like the small guy in the middle of the show, and all his friends are there. And it's black and white, and I love it so much because in my life I attracted my wife, who is a stage manager, and she's lived in New York, did theater, all these beautiful things. And now we're in Tucson, and she works at the local theater, of course, as stage manager. And I, I literally what I just said. I feel like I get to live my ancestors' dreams. Like they continue through me. You know what I mean? Because I have that similar photo of hanging out with all these actors and friends and people and artists that pursue this life in a way that, and I was like, I want to do this van and I want to take it on a tour and meet awesome people. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but I'm going to make this work. Right. And when you reached out, it, it's me putting something out into the world as a signal, and someone replies to the signal. Like, you know how cool that is? It's so cool. It doesn't get cool. This is what I'm saying. This is the point of putting yourself out there, because you get to meet amazing people.
Well, this
And
is
if at the end of life that's what it's about, then
but
that's what it's about, man.
this is what I'm saying. This is why you and I put out the signal. This is why you and I. This is not why everybody puts out the signal. Some people
100%.
put out signals and the intention is different. And I think the intentionality is important. Like you're
100%.
remembering your dad and you're carrying that legacy, and that has meaning for you. And the same thing with me. And plant medicine has been a big part of my journey, and I've been in ceremony, and the plants have told me directly in the ceremony, you are feeling all the feelings that they couldn't feel. You are the one they were waiting for. Like the plants have told me that directly in ceremony. But
You're the one.
yeah, you and I, that awareness, that consciousness, that intentionality, I think it's unique to us. Not everybody that's putting out content or books, like that's not what everybody is trying to create. I think you and I, we value connection. We value our ancestors. We value, we're so grateful for what we have, because we know how much worse it could be. And
Way
we
worse.
feel with great gifts comes great
Yeah.
responsibility, and we carry that responsibility with grace, and we want to empower other people. That's all very special. That's a special intentionality.
I mean, again, I can't put it in better wording. It's so special. It really is so special. You're so right. And I'm so grateful. And like, this is the thing, whoever sees this, because again, I don't know who's watching this, but if you are someone out there who is looking for a way to express themselves through memoir, writing, trying to find that voice, struggling with something, hiding, there are so many people out there that would love to support you and help you. This person is one of them. Gabrielle, can you tell us a little bit about how people find you and come work with you in Florida? Because I think it's really dope. Like, I know how they find me, obviously, and what my work is around marketing and the author, spreading of the message and all that good stuff. But you do something really beautiful as well. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So after the book came out, I started getting messages from people like, I want to write a book too. And I wanted to be in person with people for all the reasons that were for the reasons you got your bus and want to be on your bus tour. I also wanted to be with people. So kind of on a whim, I put out a post and a directory listing saying, hey, come to West Palm and write with me for 2 days. I live in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's beautiful. It's sunny all year long, right? Come and stay overnight with me, and we will map your manuscript, or we'll dive into some area where you're stuck, or we'll just explore the topic and see where it leads. And gratefully, about a dozen people have shown up over the last couple months to do just that. They come in, I pick them up at the airport, we hang out for 2 days. It's so much fun. People have come from all over. They've come from Chicago and Canada and New York and just like everywhere. And it's been amazing. And then sometimes we continue the relationship online. Like sometimes we'll do some remote coaching, and if they have a big project and we kind of have to get through the whole thing. But the most satisfying part is just being with them and helping them to do all the things that we're talking about, to find the voice, to find the courage, to strengthen that writing muscle. And so that's what I've been doing. And it's been incredibly fun and satisfying. So again, you can schedule a discovery call with me. I was saying to Hussein before we started this call, I feel like some people are intimidated, but hopefully after you've heard our story, you will be less intimidated to actually talk to us. So you should schedule a discovery call through my website and I will talk to you about your idea and then we'll see what happens.
I love that so much. You are the warrior that goes back into the battle and rescues more people.
Oh yeah, for
from
sure.
themselves. The battle of self. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the biggest battle, right?
Yeah.
Like when I was young, I heard the word jihad on the news because it was, fucking, unfortunately, the 9/11 situation and all this stuff, which is today, surprisingly. But I was like, Dad, what are they talking about? Like, this is not what my dad thought. Like, again, peaceful garden, reading the Quran. Like, it was so like holy and sacred and loved it. It was all peace. I was like, Dad, what did he? He's like, read this, and it was like words from the prophet. He said, the biggest jihad that you will ever, which is a holy war, like the holiest of all holy wars, is the one with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And he's like, so whoever says this word to you, they are trying to get you out of what is true, which is that there's a war happening outside you, which, yes, there is. There's always going to be somebody fighting someone else. But the war that we really have to fight is the one within. And that's why we have to become garden warriors. We have to protect our truth, our self, our soul from being like intoxicated by what we see in our world. And it diminishes our urge to survive, our urge to live, our urge to grow and help others.
Yeah.
And I remember like he's saying it right now in my ear, and I totally feel his presence right now. So thank you for this. And you have to fight for what you believe in. And I think you are one of those warriors. So thank you for bringing that up. This excites me even more to continue writing my work and indulging deeper into it. So thank you for that. And I literally can't wait till we meet in person, because if our energies are like this, I can't imagine what they're going to be like.
You're not going to be able to get rid of me. If you come here, I'm going to get on that bus. You're not going to.
I can't wait. It's going to be so fun. I literally can't wait. Like I really mean that. And thank you so much for your time, your generosity, your thoughtfulness, you reaching out, like, and really solidifying to me how important what I get to do is. And I wanted to solidify to you that your voice not only matters, but I want to share it with my community, with my people, and whoever else is out there that needs your support in writing their works. So thank you so much, Gabrielle, for hanging out with me today.
Great.
Seriously, it meant the world.
Yay! Thank you.
So cool. Thank you.